EAA Chapter 166 in Hartford, Connecticut. It's the home of the van's RV-12 build, where work continues on the RV build project, including tidying up the Rotax engine installation, working with the cowling, and getting creative with a little fuel tank problem. Here's project lead Rick Montero.
I'm going to give you another update on where we are with our build this evening. But one of the things we did want to talk about was the fact that we actually hired a highly skilled Rotax mechanic to come out and look at our installation of our Rotax 912 ULS. One of the reasons for driving us to do that was this is a brand new Rotax engine, but it's been sitting in a crate for several years. So we acquired the kit about 5 years ago. We've been working on it, but the Rotax engine itself has been sitting for all of that time. And we wanted to bring an experienced mechanic out, take a look at our installation, and get his suggestions on any sort of improvements we need to make with our installation, and what sort of inspections we might want to do on the engine, given the fact that it's been sitting for so long. So we collected a list of 20-something items that the individual gave us. A lot of good suggestions. A lot of them were minor, like routing of wires, improving them, like separating these fuel line hoses by using these zip ties so that they don't chafe against each other. Other things he talked about was our pitot tube. We had a little bit of a dip in our pitot tube, or pitot-static tube there, and he suggested running it a little bit higher so that there's no low point which could collect water, moisture, and then maybe cause the pitot-static system to stop working. Other things he suggested to us was the using fire sleeve to wrap our radiator hoses. And so we went out and purchased some. This is the fire sleeve. So it's basically fiberglass that's got a RTV coating on it, and it helps reduce the heat transfer into the hose that's inside of this. So this basically gets wrapped around. He suggested we use that and put it on our radiator hoses. So there's a couple of radiator hoses in the bottom that are very close to the muffler and run right next to the exhaust pipes. So he suggested that we wrap our radiator hoses with the fire sleeve. You probably notice as well in the video that we have safety wired our springs on these exhaust pipes to the muffler. And that was another suggestion that he provided to us. He said if they ever do fatigue and break loose, the safety wire will help keep them in place until you have a chance to do the repair. So he gave us a lot of great tips. One of the things he suggested, since the engine has been sitting for several years, is to do an inspection on the gearbox to make sure that there's no corrosion inside the gearbox. So when we're getting a little bit closer to running the engine, we're going to bring him back and have him disassemble the gearbox and inspect it to make sure there's no corrosion inside. And he said it shouldn't take more than a couple of hours of effort to do that. We've also asked him to help us out with the oil purging process before engine start, and I think there's also an inspection, or during the oil purge, you have to make sure that you get oil all the way into the hydraulic lifters. So that's an important point to make sure that you get that done before you start the engine. Okay, so moving away from the engine, to give you a quick update on where we are with the rest of the build, we had finished the lower cowl work where we installed all the hinges for mating it up to the airframe, and we were really happy with the way that came out. We also started working on the install of the baffle, the cooling baffle, and we got it all fitted. and ready to install, but the installation requires that you epoxy the two, the cooling baffle to the lower cowl in the position. And so we've got everything prepped, and that's why we've taped it all off to keep it from getting dirty. Right now the temperature in the hangar is in the low 50s to high 40s, and to do the epoxy work we need the temperature up closer to about 60 degrees minimum if we want to do the epoxy work. So we've decided to put that off until we get a little bit warmer weather come in, and what we're doing now is moving ahead or back to working on installation of the canopy. So we've got the canopy frame set up on the bench. We're starting to install some of the hardware on it, and tonight we're hoping to be able to actually install the canopy frame onto the airframe. So there's some, in terms of that work, there's some holes that you have to countersink to get your mounting hardware in. And you have the gas pistons that you have to attach that aid with opening and closing the canopy. All right, we finished the installation of our fuel tank, and is kind of a word of caution for everybody out there that may be working on a RV-12, especially the the legacy model like ours. The fuel tank itself has a fuel return line that comes up from the bottom of the fuel tank in this area, and then it runs all the way into the fuel filler neck, and it sticks up into the fuel filler neck here. And that tube, that return line, is held by a couple of clips that are riveted in place in these two locations. And since we've been working on our RV-12 for over 5 years, the kit that we had purchased, the gas tank itself was pre-assembled by Vans for us. And somewhere along the way, during those 5 years, the return line itself, as I said, where it comes back up and it sticks up into the fuel fill neck, it had got pushed down into the tank, and it actually bent these retaining clips and dropped into the tank a bit. And the way we discovered it was that when we were running a fuel flow test and filling up the tank, the mechanical gauge was stuck at full, and even though we had emptied the tank. And what we discovered was that the return line had bent down, and the float on the mechanical gauge had gotten tangled up on it, and it was holding it in place in the basically full tank position. So we had to figure out a way to get them untangled, get the mechanical gauge working again, and then we pulled the return line back up, and we figured out a way to rivet it back into the fuel neck here to retain it in place, because the two clips that are on it, we don't trust that they're going to hold it in place because they've now been bent. And even though we might be able to bend them back up, they're not going to secure it as well as it had previously. So we came up with an innovative solution for that. We just basically used the clip itself. We fabricated another clip and riveted it to the side of the fill neck, and basically capturing the return line right up against the side of the fuel neck. And we found that that's working well, and we shouldn't have any problems with the fuel return line dropping down into the tank again. So I think that's where we are. It's a pretty quick summary of where we are with our build.